Hello folks, we are back again now on round 3 of SRL. We still maintain the points lead even after the disaster that was Australia. And yeah, I got a cat on my lap here. And yeah, good news and bad news. The bad news is with the storms coming through, we're in the northeast getting kind of the tail end of Hurricane Ian. In the storms, had a loss of power, and due to issues with my console being on while that happened, I lost the footage for the race and for the next video I was going to make, which is the next round of Hyperdrive. And yeah, that's really frustrating, obviously, but luckily I did still somehow have the qualifying part clip. And of course, with this game's theater mode, with the highlights, I can at least show that as well. The good news is, not just do we have the theater mode, but also the race itself in this session here, the SRL, was very boring and straightforward, so you guys really don't miss anything there. The meat of the bones to this session, to this whole race, I should say, is the qualifying session, and it's what I'm going to be talking about here. Pretty much my mindset in the qualifying. As you can see, we have wet conditions in qualifying and a chance of wet conditions late into the race, but they would never come. It was just too far out that the race got done before the wet weather came. But I was very happy actually to see wet weather for qualifying because those of you who know me know that wet weather is one of my big strengths. So the more races it rains, the easier it is for me to win the championship, basically. And going into one of these sessions, especially wet, but just in all qualifying sessions in general, what I'm really going to talk about in this video is the mindset of actively learning as you're driving. So what I mean by that is, and like I said, it's emphasized in changing conditions like this, is that on this first run, I'm really going to pay attention to where I brake and how the car feels throughout the corner and try to remember each corner, like, oh, I can brake a little later here, I can brake a little earlier there. That kind of active learning, it's pivotal in a qualifying session, especially when it might be slightly different conditions or temperatures than what you practiced in, especially in changing conditions in the wet. So to start the lap off, I'm sticking it in 5th gear. Spun the tires a little bit. I don't want to be on the outside curb there on the exit. And I'm really just hoping to get a clean lap in, a legal lap. Good picking of the braking point there. Use just the right amount of curb. You want to stay off the sausage curb. Another thing to point out, I believe I've mentioned it before, is that this league uses simulation damage rates. You can damage the floor, so that's something you want to be careful of. There, I felt like I could have broke a little bit earlier. I broke on my usual point that I would for the dry, but in the wet there, it seems like I could break a little bit earlier. And again, active learning. There's little notes I'm putting into my head as I'm making my lap. Same thing with here. Could have broke the slightest bit later. Turned in too early, hit the curb. Little tricky on the traction. Again, another thing to remember, and another place that I can make a change to have a better lap time there. And there I was trying to get to the throttle a little too aggressively. The best way to put in perspective, like how you can apply it to your races when it comes to active learning, is just already have in your head where you're going to brake before you get to the corner, obviously, regardless of whether it's dry or wet, and just do your best to remember where on the lap you feel like you can make up the time and what exactly you can do differently. So then all you got to do in your next run is go out there and execute it. Our first lap was good enough for the quickest lap so far in the session, which is good. But like I said, I remember key places on the lap where I feel like I could gain time. This braking point right here I'm approaching up to, I could have broke a little bit later at. The next braking point I could brake a little bit later at. Again, maybe I could go up a gear on the exit because I was a little sketchy on the traction. I felt like I could have carried a little bit more speed through the first of the 2 left-handers. Felt good through the second left-hander. And the rest of the lap felt decent. I just need to make sure I completely stay off the curb on the outside to not mess up my traction on the exit of the final corner as I run to the line to start my lap. Those are the things I will remember from my first lap, actively learn as the session goes on, and continue to improve as the time kicks down in qualifying. As we advance a little bit further now, I am out on the track for getting my outlap in for my second qualifying run. And another thing to bring up is that my teammate I was supposed to have, who missed the first 2 races of the season, is stepping away from the league. And the Logan curse of teammates continues. It's unbelievable. No matter who my teammate is, they will always step out of the league or have an awful season or not show up for half the fucking races. It's unbelievable. The only Constructors Championship I've ever won in my league racing career is one where I won the Drivers' Championship by over 150 points. It was absurd, you know. So, but now, a driver that you guys may have seen if you're really paying attention, or if you're from the league, you'll just know. He did a couple. He was a reserve technically before Tim Wetnick, and he was one of the people towards the front of the grid, which is great. He has now found a permanent seat in the league, and lucky for me, it is my teammate. And there's a really obvious pro to that is I have a teammate that shows up. Not only that, but he's competent. Holy shit, I know, plot twist here. Not only that, but there is, I guess you could say, one slight con to it. Because he is decently quick, it could have a chance of causing issues with hogging the pit box between us in some races this year. But hey, I will take the pros with the cons any day of the week. I'm grateful to have a good teammate. And also, I kind of felt a little bit like, man, now it kind of feels dirty, you know? Like, me and Tim, I feel like are going to absolutely run away with the Constructors. But hey, I'm not going to complain one bit. It's going to be 2022 in SRL is going to be the glory of Haas, and I am very okay with it. And as you could see, if you're paying attention to the lap and not my nonsense I'm talking about, you could see the adjustments that I made throughout the lap. I broke later into turns, well, I guess technically turn 3, call it turn 2. I broke slightly later into the next braking point. I went up a gear on the exit of that corner, carried a little bit more speed to the first of the left-handers. Active learning, remembering where I left a little time on the table in the first run, executed that on the second run, and we improve our time. Not only that, but I kind of felt in the controller as the session progressed that the track was actually getting a little bit quicker. And here we're going to do our teammate a little solid. We're going to try to give him a little bit of slipstream. I see him right behind me. Why not? I would much rather have my teammate running with me at the front than an enemy, because wow, you might say, oh, but then it's someone that's like fighting you for pitch strategy. Hey, that's okay. Me and him, we would have enough of an understanding like, hey, early on in the race, let's not fight each other to the death and lose a bunch of time and try to pull away together. And that is just an unbelievably large asset. I mean, like I said, I've had terrible teammate luck my career, and there's been multiple league championships that I've been battling for, and the person I'm battling with, it's like their teammate is also the third place guy, and it's just a fucking nightmare. It's like you're literally racing a team of 2 by yourself. It is just 3.5 pains of the dick, you know. So to be able to have a competent teammate on my side for once, it honestly feels, I mean, even though this is my 3rd year of league racing, it still feels fucking alien to me, you know. But hey, always good things. Glory to Haas. We're going to bring home the Constructors this year. Time to fast forward now to the end of the session. Qualifying, very important as always, especially on a track like this. It's very slipstreamy. Less than 30 seconds left in the session. The track was getting slightly quicker, so it is pivotal that we still put in a good time on this lap. Nail our braking point into turn 1. Same place that we've been braking our first two runs. Just a little bit easier to get on the throttle on the exit. That's the only overall adjustment to the entire lap that you will see. Again, using that slightly later breaker point that we used on our second run. And so far, this is definitely a lap that has improvement because I've made the adjustments on all the corners from the first run, but with the track that is getting quicker from the second and third run. All of this is going to come together and hopefully give us a pole position lap time. It would be 3 for 3 for us in the season. Again, continuing my trend of now nailing my qualifying laps, except the apex of that corner, but at least the traction was good. And the track has naturally gotten so much quicker since my last run that I probably actually still gained time on that corner. Everything else has been flawless to the best of my own ability. Maybe a little bit too much inside curb there caused me to slightly understeer, but again, with the track improving, it's hard to perfectly judge all that, and still definitely overall an improvement. We nailed the 110.2. That was pole position, I believe, when I crossed the line by like 7.5 tenths, if I remember correctly. And, well, when I crossed the line, it was by a full second, but that would change. And overall, by the end, I believe we get pole by 7 tenths. Let's fast forward a little bit. And yeah, I'm wrong. It's actually better than I thought. We got pole by 8 tenths. And our teammate, I believe, came in 4th in qualifying, which is good for us. And now I'm going to be skipping ahead to when I got into theater mode. Again, very unfortunate that it happened this way, but hey, a lot better than nothing. Heading into the race, the one thing to point out, well, two things to point out. Strategy is the same as a lot of other races, hards to mediums for the same reason I've said in other videos. I'm not going to rehash the point. My teammate, though, behind me in 4th is on the medium tire. We get a great launch off the line, safely ahead of all the cars behind. We use a little bit of extra ERS here in the first lap to ensure that we held our position, and even try to extend that beyond the DRS zone if we could. It looked like early on in the first couple laps that we would be able to extend out of the DRS zone, but my teammate was coming up behind me on the medium tires. But even though he was on the medium tires, our pace was just good enough to consistently stay in front of him, but at the same time, we were pulling away from the rest of the field the entire time. And like I said, this race was pretty boring and straightforward. Basically, what you're seeing right there went on for the entire time. Eventually, at the end of the race, a full safety car came out that brought the field back together, but my teammate pit for sauce, which put Aleski in between me and him. But luckily for me, Aleski had floor damage, so he wasn't really able to keep up with the pace. So we went green with 2 laps to go. I burned all the juice. I had the pace advantage over Aleski. My teammate lost time fighting with him, so by the time he got the overtake done, even though he had fresher tires than me, I had enough ERS and a gap ahead of me to, as you've seen at the end of the race there, bring home the win. But yeah, other than that late safety car in the last 2 laps, I just led the whole race. It was a nice solid thing. I wish I could go into more detail about it, and I didn't have the issues with the weather that came through, but it is what it is. Like I said, the main focus there was the qualifying session. That was the big outlier. And again, now we have a big constructors lead already, and we have extended our drivers lead as well. That's going to do it for this one, guys. I'll make sure the video it did save, but it doesn't get deleted next time. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.